Hello everyone, my name is Minister Eugene Atkinson. Today I'm presenting a video. It's an assignment from Dr. and Professor Julie Nance of Mid-America Christian University, and it's in the class of Program Orientation. Today's date is April 11, 2017. So what I'm talking about today is plagiarism, and it's academic plagiarism versus pulpit plagiarism. What's the difference, or even do I think there's a difference between the two? So I'll be talking to you about that today. And one thing that I want everyone to realize is that pastors, preachers, reverends, or whatever title they take on, but they rely heavily on the ability to use illustrations in their sermons, in their messages that they are preaching. And illustrations, they aid in presenting the message. It makes it easier for some to understand. It's relatable for some more so than others when they have an illustrations. And a lot of the illustrations that are being used, some, are not the illustration of that particular passage, perhaps. So they just use those illustrations to glean from, to help get their message across to others. And we can take a look, in the Bible, and we use that as a reference here. We see that the Apostle Paul, he used, different illustrations. And he also used ideas and some of the teachings that he taught from philosophers and even some of the prophets in the Old Testament during some of his teaching. And Jesus also did the same. I won't say that Jesus used anything from philosophers. That would be, I believe, an incorrect statement to say that. But what I am saying, that Jesus, he did rely on using the Old Testament, the teachings of the old prophets, of the prophets in the Old Testament as well. And neither, of the two, the Apostle Paul nor Jesus, always cited, or shall I say, gave credit to the source. Not all the time. They did not do that. So if you want, you can research and check that out on your own if you like, but we know that the two of them, I'm just using as an example, did not always cite the source, of what they were using. But one thing is for certain is that no pastor want to be seen as pretentious, especially if they're using someone else's work and the audience perhaps knows that it's not their own work. So they don't want to be seen in that light. And I think most pastors would do, the right thing. And we're going to talk about the right thing. What is the right thing? They don't, they want to be seen as original pastors. We want to be seen as being original. We want to be seen as using what God has given us to teach to his people. All right. So with that being said, let's talk about academic plagiarism. Academic plagiarism versus pulpit plagiarism. What is academic plagiarism? Well, there's a book in program orientation. This is the class that I'm taking that all the students use. And this book, if you can see this right here, this is the book that we use. This is our guideline that we go by for this class to help us be better academic, or to become better academic writers. So we use the APA version. It's titled A Pocket Style Manual. It's the 7th edition, and this is what we, the students, are using. But within this book, on page 31, the authors are Summer, Hacker, and Matthew, and they've stated that there are 3 different acts that are considered to be plagiarism. Number 1 is failing to cite quotations and borrowed ideas. Number 2, failing to enclose borrowed language in quotation marks. And number 3, failing to put summaries and paraphrases in your own words. And that's on page 31 again. But also on page 2, I'm sorry, not page 2, page 10, in that very same manual that I just showed you, there's this term called intellectual property, and this refers to published works. It refers to ideas, and it refers to images that have already been created by an individual or by groups or by a group. So when you use the intellectual property of others in your own work, by quoting, by summarizing, by paraphrasing, then you must give credit to the source. Because if you do not, then give source of that information, a failure to do so, it is a form of academic plagiarism. So now that we know what academic plagiarism is, let's go ahead and talk about pulpit plagiarism. Pulpit plagiarism, there is such a thing. But I just showed you one manual that I was using. I don't have my other source handy, but it is a book by Scott Gibson. And he defined pulpit plagiarism. And let me give you the title of that book. The title of that book is Should We Use Someone Else's Sermon? Should We Use Someone Else's Sermon? And it's by Scott Gibson. So he describes in his book, and he also quoted 2 other people in his book, and I don't have their names readily available, but because I don't have that book at the moment. But Scott Gibson writes in his book that there are 2 forms, 2 different understanding of plagiarism. And the first one is that plagiarism is defined as someone who takes sermons from other preachers word for word without giving credit is guilty of plagiarism. And he goes on to say further that that is stealing what is not yours. And then there's another person that he talks about in his book. He is a journalist, this person he makes mention of in this time. And his definition is plagiarism is borrowing someone else's words and passing them off as one's own, whether in speech, print, or performance. And he says this is considered plagiarism. So it makes me think, when once you hear these words, it'll make you think. And this is what I thought of. And I know we've all heard this one before. Even if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. No matter what you do, a pig is a pig. And plagiarism works the same way. Plagiarism is plagiarism, no matter how you dress it, no matter what you put on it. It is plagiarism. It is not your own work. You can dress it up, you can dress it down, but it's not yours. It's someone else's. So, excuse me, plagiarism is plagiarism. And that brings me to this point. And it's real simple. Do your own work. Yeah, we may go and do some research, and try to glean from someone else's ideas and whatnot. Well, maybe that will help you get, your brain kick-started into, getting, deep into your sermon and using illustrations to help, bring your sermon to life. That's fine. But if you decide to use that individual's work, give them credit. Okay, just give credit to the person that did the work. So what I'm saying is you do not have to do a sermon in the pulpit, with running credits behind you on a big large screen naming everybody, because I believe that takes away from the effectiveness of your message. And I think that's one thing that we don't want to do. We want to ensure that since we are speaking to God's people on His behalf, we need to do all we can to keep it intact so the people will get the point of the message, because the purpose is to help people, not hinder them in their relationship with God. But give credit briefly of someone else's work that you use. So if you use someone's quote, just say, hey, this is a quote from Dr. Julie Nance, for example. You know, if I've heard her preach something and I said, man, I like that, I'm going to use that. Okay, then I need to give her credit. If I don't want to give her credit, then the bottom line is I shouldn't use it. That's dishonesty. Just give her the credit, because God gave it to her, apparently, you know, so at least, you know, I can do is give her the credit of what's hers. All right. I don't know where that came from, but I used it. So anyways, but remember, listen, it should be your work, and your work should come from what God has given you, because the bottom line is we are doing this for God, not for ourselves, and it's His work, not ours. So if we do as He instructs us, we wouldn't have to, we won't, you know, need to worry about plagiarism. Do the right thing and give credit to the people that deserve the credit. Okay. So now listen, on paper, your quotations, your summaries, and your paraphrasing must be done in accordance with APA guideline and in accordance with your school standards. And that's the difference between academic plagiarism and pulpit plagiarism. So with this little short video, I hope that it helps someone who may have never heard of pulpit plagiarism versus academic plagiarism, or even maybe someone have never heard of academic plagiarism. But either way, there's a brief understanding of the two, and I hope this video has helped. God bless you. Thank you.